Welcome back to the Triple Threat Podcast. My name is Ishan Chef. Alongside me, as always, is William and Ishan. And today we begin our running back rankings. We'll be going from 33 to 21 today. And we have some exciting names, don't we?
We
So
do.
remember to like and subscribe. We'll be beginning the running back rankings today. And we'll have that going on for a couple of videos. Then we'll be heading over to receivers. And then we'll be posting this stuff on the website. That should be coming out soon, any day at this point. And stay tuned for the website content and all of our player rankings for the essential positions in 2020. So starting off at number 33 for running backs, we have J.D. McKissick. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, he's a solid receiving back. That's his main strength in his forte. But I'm going to talk about his running ability first. For someone that's a receiving back, you typically think of those being as outside runners, someone who can get outside the tackles, use their speed or misdirection to make a few plays in the open field. But that hasn't been J. McKissick's game this season. He has really thrived going through the middle behind Brandon Scherf, who's been just a great guard. Going outside the tackle, he's been really disappointing. 3.1 yards a carry. But you partner that when you're going behind Brandon Scherf, it's 5.2 yards a carry. He's been really good going in the middle, averaging around five yards a carry. And it's been a strange to see someone a receiving back do so well up the middle. And I think what I like, he's just breaking that misconception about receiving backs. He's averaging 5.2 yards a carry on first down. So that's something that's really impressive for somebody. He is being targeted down the field, 1.9 average depth of throw. So that's really impressive. He's second in receiving yards, only behind Alvin Kamara. He's second least in yards after catch per reception, so he's just doing a lot of the catching downfield. He's second in receiving first downs in 30. So I think he's been really impressive.
Yeah, this has kind of been his breakout year, and he's formed a pretty decent, tandem with Antonio Gibson. And if the rest of the offense kind of holds up and they figure out their situation at quarterback, this could be a nice little duo at running back if the football team heads for a playoff push. So moving on, we have Devin Singletary, and he's a guy that I expected to do a lot better than 32nd.
Yeah, I just don't think he's the greatest of running backs. So one of the metrics I like using a lot is defensive yard above replacement. So this is basically saying it's weighing in defensive strength of schedule, how tough the defenses are playing, and then how many more yards would you earn versus a replacement level running back. And Devin Singletary has a negative 10 score. So he's not being great. He's a DVOA, so a defensive value above replacement of negative 10%. So he's been really inefficient and pretty much been a replacement level running back at this point. He's a solid power back. He's fourth in yards after contact, which is really impressive. It's always been his strength. His nickname is Motor Singletary. But what's been surprising, he's been so poor up the middle, and that's really what has been strengthening. Just going up the middle, getting contact, averaging 3 yards per carry, and then 1.4 yards per carry in the right D gap, which is really uninspiring. I know the Buffalo offensive line hasn't been great in running blocking, but still, you'd be looking for some better production than that. He's been good going to the outside and in space, which is surprising. He's seventh worst in yards before contact, though, so it's not really his forte. He's really hard to rank, but he just hasn't been great this season.
Yeah, I think inefficient could be a good way to describe him. Effective yards is Football Outsiders' way of factoring DVOA into the actual yards metric and coming up with a more accurate depiction of how many yards a player has. So Singletary had just regular 680 yards, but effective yards, he ranks 30th with 557. So a big drop off. And combine that with a 49% success rate and only 2 touchdowns to 1 fumble, he hasn't been the most efficient running back in the league. So moving on, we have Kenyon Drake, and he's another guy that, everyone thought would kind of break out this year into a top 10, top 15 running back. And he has done pretty much the opposite.
Yeah, it's really been a stagnant year for him. If anything, he's gone back. As I mentioned with Devin Singletary, he's got a DVA of -2. And one thing I found really surprising, I think that you can chalk this up to a lot of Cliff Kingsbury and just inefficient scheming. Almost half his snaps are behind the center. I feel like he's kind of just using the run game to be like, okay, we ran the ball, ha ha ha, defense, buy on that, rather than actually using it as a weapon. And because of that, he's only averaging 3.3 yards a carry on the outside and 1.9 yards carried to the outside left, which is really just uninspiring. PFF ranks about 59, so he has just
Eesh.
not been a good season for him. I think that has a little bit of injury concern. He's come back a little bit stronger after the injury, but I think that when you look at him scheming and then just play style, I mean, Chase Edmonds has been at points a better running back, but overall not the best group in Arizona. And then if you look at a lot of the other guys, I mean, you don't realize how many great running backs are in the league. Like Kenyon Drake at 30 or 30, yeah, 31. I don't think that's just because he's a bad running back. I just think it's because there's so many good running backs in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. I think we'll get to a few more later on, but yeah, I think inconsistency has been kind of the name of the game for Drake. He struggled early on in the year, and then he had that one big game that kind of screwed up or kind of skewed some of his numbers. Like he's 10th in yards and then 6th in total rushing attempts. And then moving on to number 30, my running back, Todd Gurley. He is an upgrade over Devontae Freeman, but he is still 30th at running back. Why do you have him so low?
Well, I would have thought I had him higher, but combined with his end of season performances, which have just haven't. I mean, he's been pretty much healthy, right? Or
Yeah,
and he's just
he's
not
just
been getting the touches.
yeah, he's just been a no factor pretty much.
He's dead last on this list in yards per carry at 3.5 yards, which is just awful. He's 18th in first downs and 14th in attempts, so he's getting the ball a fairly amount. And he's slowed considerably at the end of the season. I mean, his red zone ability has still been solid as always, but they need to find better ways to use him. He's second to last in defensive yards, and the arthritis hasn't gotten to him yet. He's still tied fifth in broken tackles, and he's only 14th in attempts. So clearly, he's still got some ability to work in the open field. I just don't think that the Falcons are utilizing him properly, and he's just been a little bit of a disappointment this season. Maybe if you were asking me this halfway through this season when he was like seventh in fantasy points, I might have him at like 20 or something. But he's ended the season really slow. I mean, give me more like the eye test about Todd Gurley. How has he been this season?
Yeah, I think you were spot on. At the beginning of the season, I was really, really excited about him because he was a noticeable upgrade over Freeman. But these last couple of games, he's just gone quiet. And I think that's attributed to now Raheem Morris not using him as much as, say, Dan Quinn. But I also think that, yeah, the coaching and play calling in general is just not the best. I've never been that big of a fan of Dirk Cotter. And I think that we need to move on from him and Morris. So moving on, we have James Conner, another former Pro Bowler. And what do you think about Conner? And is he the best running back on this Pittsburgh Steelers team with McFarland and Benny Snell?
He definitely has been. He's been a solid runner. He's a lot more effective with his teammates. He averages a whole yard more per carry than the rest of the team at like 3.3, 4.3 compared to around 3.3. So that just shows you the value he brings to this team. He struggles running behind the left tackle, which I found a little bit surprising. Isn't that still Villanueva? 2.3 yard per carry. Defensive yards has him around 30th in the league with 7, meaning he'll get you 7 more yards than replacement. He's been a solid back. He hasn't been able to fully take advantage of being a workhorse. Doesn't have the health to do that. But we've seen when he gets his touches, he's effective. But overall, the Steelers' run game just hasn't been effective at all. It's hard to know how much is James's health, how much is play calling, how much is just his ability. He's really hard to rank. I really like him, but there's just a lot of really good running backs, and we'll get to them in this list. I just think there's 28 guys better than him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that Pittsburgh as a whole, their receiving game has really flourished. We all know how good they are, but their running game has taken a hit in just overall efficiency and then production. And I think that they're going to be trending towards the receivers a little bit more, especially with a potential new quarterback looming in the next couple of years. So moving on to 28, we have Melvin Gordon. What are your thoughts on Melvin Gordon? As he is a very good running back, but on the receiving end, he has not been doing the best.
That's exactly right. He's one of the most polarizing players in the league. 6th in PFF rushing grade, but 4th worst in PFF passing receiving grade. So that's really surprising. Really a big disparity as a running back. He's 12th in broken tackles, and he has 4.7 yards per carry. That's really solid stuff. He's second lowest in success rate, which is a metric determining a player's running ability. So using down and distance, say you're on first down. To have a successful plays, you have 3 plays to get a first down. So if you have a run over 3.5 yards, that's a successful play because you're trending towards positive of getting a first down. He's second to last in that. So that's a little bit surprising for someone who's such a good runner, and that's why I have him lower. But he has a positive DVOA. He's a solid runner. I just think his pass catching ability and his success rate bring him down a little bit because if he wanted to go just by pure rushing ability, he could be, or PFF at least thinks he's in the top 10. Solid runner. He adds a lot to the Broncos offense. I'd look to see him have a good role next season when they're trying to push with a healthy roster.
Mm-hmm. I think injuries have kind of screwed up this team a little bit, but Gordon's rushing has been a bright spot. He just needs to become a little bit more well-rounded and efficient. And so moving on, the guy that DeAndre Hopkins was traded for, David Johnson. What are your thoughts on him, and how is he fitting into this Houston team that has just been a pure disappointment at this point?
Yeah, he's come alive as of late. I think in the last game he had like 100 yards receiving and rushing, something along those lines. It was really hard determining who'd be better between him and Gordon, but he's been a solid runner overall. He's mainly used up the middle, but his most explosive and effective plays are to the outside. In his 14 snaps to the outside or outside the tackles, he's had 4 explosive plays, including 3 explosive plays in 6 attempts running to the outside right, which is really impressive. I think that just shows you how bad play calling has been, just not recognizing his ability, what's been effective, what's been working. Because you like I said with the brain analogy, you're taking your system, you're throwing your running back at it, but clearly your running back been doing better elsewhere. And I think that he could take advantage more of his outside ability, his ability in space, because that's made him so good in Arizona. He can still run up the middle, but he's the same defensive yards above replacement as James Conner at 7. But his receiving ability is what really had me separating him above Conner because I value them pretty much as equals in the running game.
Yeah, just a little bit more stats on Johnson. 4 touchdowns, 0 fumbles, but a very bad 43% success rate. Why do you think his success rate is so low? Because that's 41st out of an eligible 44 players.
The reason I would think that's so low is because one, you have to look at how bad the interior offensive line is for this team, and you're going to look at what are the plays he's most often running and how he's being utilized. So you look at the offensive line. Let me pull it up here because it has not been good at all. And I would just imagine that if you're trying to run it up the middle on a third and short or like a third down, and you're not just getting effective plays, and on third down, a successful play has to be a first down. You look at what situations they've been put in. Has he been put in a lot of third and long situations? I'm trying to pull up the advanced metrics real quick. Lineup, you look at their offensive line, not great. Brent Cuvale at left guard, Zach Fulton at right guard, and then Nick Martin in the middle. Overall, just not a good unit at all. I just think that he's not been put in a situation, he hasn't had enough situation to thrive. And if you can't turn a bad offensive line into a good with your running ability, it's really hard to rank you in the top. or at least in the top half. And then as for like down and distance, I'm trying to pull up the advanced metrics for him because he has 84 attempts on first down, averaging 4.4 yards a carry. So he's really being a bulk of his carries are on first down. And he's been relatively successful in those, but you look at his other down and distances, not as effective. So that's what I would just look at. He's being a lot of first down running. You need a lot more yards to be successful on first down. So that's what I would tell you.
Mm-hmm. So moving on to number 26, we have the first of a few rookies on this overall list. We have DeAndre Swift, and to be honest, we weren't too high on him. We're a lot higher on guys like Jonathan Taylor. Do you think that Swift has exceeded or kind of fallen behind expectations for the season?
For my expectations, I think he's exceeded them. I didn't think he was a great prospect coming out. I think that if you look at the media perspective, he's probably performed on par of what he's been expected to, maybe a little bit better. Uh, One thing he is good at is getting in space. He's third highest in yards before contact. He's just shifty, trying to avoid contact as much as possible, and he should be because he's dead last in yards after contact. He's not a great power runner. He's more of a finesse type of guy. And I think that's something they have to really understand with him and partner him with a good power back because with DeAndre Swift, you need a good combo partner with him. Adrian Peterson's pretty solid. I think Kerryon Johnson is a pretty solid partner as well. He's a much better runner left, which is really surprising to me. He's averaging 5.3 yards per carry going to the left compared to 3 yards per carry going to the right. I don't know if this is a vision thing, a play calling thing, an offensive line thing. I just found that quite surprising. In his 14 snaps, I just thought that was a little surprising. He's a decent red zone option, 9 touchdowns overall. PFF has him at 42nd overall. So I think that's a little bit harsh. I think he's a solid player. He's been okay. He's been solid.
And then, let's see, yeah, just going into some more stats about Swift. He is 15th in defensive yards above replacement and 11th in DVOA. So he has been a positive impact on this team. So moving on to a guy that just had a very good game, came off of probably his best career game, Myles Gaskin.
Yeah, he's been really, really solid this season. He has been consistent, but his one problem is availability. He's missed a couple of games in the middle of the season. But when you look at his stats, I think he's only started 6 games this season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just really impressive, the numbers he has put up in such limited minutes. He's fourth worst defensive yards against above replacement, which is a bit surprising among these 33 players. But his receiving grade, he's been really, really solid. He's 6th in yards after catch per reception, and he's 12th in yards despite only 6 starts, which is really impressive. Being that effective and that volume of a pass catcher in that little time has been really impressive. He's got 560 yards in 9 games, including only 6 starts. Really impressive stuff. 4.2 yards per carry. His receiving game, as I said, is really solid. He's been a really, really effective pass catcher. I think, only 6 targets he didn't complete all season. He's been reliable. He's been effective. He's been efficient. He's been a really, really, really solid player. This has been his first season. He's been great.
Yeah. He's been a very reliable running back, and I think he's just going to be, I don't know if he'll be the go-to guy, but he'll be on the team and he'll get a considerable amount of snaps going forward.
Yeah, he's proved a lot from last year.
Yeah. So moving on to a guy that at one point was trending towards the top 10, but has just not had a very good season, Joe Mixon.
He hasn't had a good past couple of seasons. He's been really disappointing, in my opinion. And I think a lot of people will be surprised to see him at 24. But I think that if you look more at the metrics, he really you wouldn't be surprised. You'd think that might be a little bit kind. He's third to last in defensive yards per replacement, third worst in success rate among these 3 running backs, 1.7 yards after contact for someone who's supposed to be a great running back up the middle. He has the highest attempts per broken tackle in the entire league at 39.7. that's like a considerable margin. He's just not been elusive at all. Like he should be doing a lot better in the open field, up the middle. There's no really strength to his game. He hasn't been thriving at all. You look at what he's done: 119 rushes for 428 yards, really inefficient stuff, 3.6 yards per carry. It's just been what I find surprising about him is that he has the talent. He's one of the most talented running backs in the league, but the last couple of years, he just hasn't really done it consistently. Last season was I have on my fantasy team, so I know how poor he was during the season. Started a game, 6 attempts, 10 yards, not 8 attempts, 10 yards, 10 attempts, 2 yards. He just has gave he's just a non-factor in the offense, and 11 attempts, 17 yards. Like that's all last season. 21 attempts, 50 yards. For someone who's been a volume running back, he just is super inconsistent. He's not getting the job done. He's not being successful on his runs, and he's not getting into the end zone. I think he only has 3 touchdowns on the year. I mean, granted, that's only in 6 games, so that's not the worst rate. But I think 3 of those touchdowns were, or well, 2 of those touchdowns were against Jacksonville. 150 yards were against Jacksonville. Against any other team, his highest total was 69 yards this season. So he just feasted off the poor. So I think that he's had a very subpar season. His best defense he's played is probably in Indianapolis or Baltimore, where he averaged 2.4 yards per carry and 3 yards per carry, respectively. He's averaged 2.8 against Cleveland, Philadelphia. He's really been carried by that Jacksonville game. So he just hasn't been very good at all. And if I was Cincinnati, I would not pay him the money he's looking for. But they already did.
Statistically, he has not been great. As you said, negative 16 defensive yards per replacement, above replacement, I mean, and then DVOA of negative 11.7 percentage, which is very, very low. And then rushing yards before contact per rushing attempt, he is 8th to worst. And then rushing yards after contact, he is 12th to worst. So he isn't really getting it done before or after contact. And combined with the terrible broken tackle rate, which is the worst in the league by a considerable margin, he's just not been He's just not been that great. How much do you attribute that to the line? Because they've been piss poor too.
I attribute it a lot to the line, but the thing you're going to want to look at is his success when he's running outside the tackle, and it just hasn't been as effective as you'd want it to be for someone who's such a talented player. I think he's a top 10 talent running back, but you look, his numbers are just inefficient all around. I'm pulling up his directional running stats right now because this is something that I find really interesting. So looking at it, averaging 3 yards a carry going outside to the left, 3.9 outside to the right. And then his most efficient spots have been going going behind the right tackle. So you just look at him, he hasn't been great. He's only had 6 explosive plays all season. So he just hasn't been effective, hasn't been efficient. I want to see more explosive plays with someone who's getting such a volume of a less than 1% explosive play rate is just not going to cut it for someone who is as talented as Joe Mixon. So I just want him to do so much better. And it has been really disappointing seeing him underperform for the past 2 seasons.
Yeah, I think for a lot of fantasy owners, they were expecting better too. And that might have cost them a couple games or even the league. So moving on to number 23, we have Raheem Mostert. And how much of his success do you attribute to the scheme?
Oh, a lot of it. I think any running back with good speed can be effective in Kyle Shanahan's system. He is first in yards before contact because of his speed and our scheme. That's really the strength of the team. He can get up to the outside, be quick and elusive, great blocking scheme, can get him great holes up in the middle. He 34 outside rushes, averages 8.8 yards a carry. That is just ridiculous. Averaging 8.8 yards a carry running outside the tackles. Just crazy numbers. He is fast. He is quick. He is a great running back, but a lot of it is scheme. So I couldn't have him any higher than this, but his stats are ridiculous. He is a just solid runner. He can work in both the running and the passing and running game. He's just a solid overall running back. I think Raheem Mostert is he's emerged when he came to San Francisco, I think there's no question the reason behind that. 104 rushing attempts for 521 yards for 5 yards per attempt. Really impressive stuff. He's effective. He's efficient. He's great in the receiving game. Only 3 passes incomplete that went his way. Overall, really solid. He can work in the receiving game. Look in the first game, 5 targets, 4 catches, 95 yards, and a touchdown. And then you look in the running game, he can have games like 8 carries, 92 yards, and a touchdown. Explosive player. That's the definition of Raheem Mostert.
Yeah, I think that last year when San Francisco was so good, they kind of had that running back trio. But Mostert really has emerged as the best of the three. I know Breida left for Miami, I believe. And then Coleman is just, I think, has it been injury? Has
He's had
Tevin
some
Coleman been
injury.
hurt? Yeah, some injury and some other problems. But Mostert has really kind of stepped up as that number one guy. And I'm excited to see him with a healthy offense because they're still very good. They've got Kittle, um, Debo, and then Brandon Ayuk, who has been a very good rookie so far. So I'm excited to see what this offense can do. And next year, when they're all healthy, see if Mostert will help them get back into contention. Because from top to bottom, this is a very good overall roster. It's now just a matter of getting them back into contention. So moving on, we have a second-year player who has really broken out, Damian Harris. What are your thoughts on him? And will he be able to kind of become the centerpiece of this offense with Tom Brady gone?
I'd hope so, but obviously I'd hope the quarterback's the focal point of any offense. But he's one that the advanced metric people really love. He's PFF's
Yeah.
number 2 running back, and I think what makes him so good is the offensive line. It's been great all season. Owenu, Isaiah Wynn, Tooney, Andrews, and Shaq Mason have been an incredible unit to run behind. He averages 5.4 yards per carry up the middle. He's second in yards before contact, even though he's running the ball in the middle at a high clip because his offensive line is so great. He's been a great runner with 12 explosive runs of 10 plus between the tackles. That's some really great metrics right there. He's 15th in defensive yards above replacement. That's solid. An 8.8 broken tackle rate. For reference, Kamara and Cook are around 10, while Clyde Edwards-Helaire is at 8.2. He is PFF's number 2 running back. But the reason I don't have many hires is that if you look at the success of other running backs in this system, Sony Michel has put up similar numbers, and guys like Rex Burkhead and J.J. Taylor have also put up similar numbers. Obviously, Damon Harris's stats are by far and away better than all of them, but he has been a great running back, but I think he just benefits from having a great offensive line, and this is just one of the reasons why he shows that the running back position is not a lot about talent, it's about offensive line. Look at those first couple of years with Zeke and with Dallas, but he had the best offensive line in football and was thriving. So you see really where running back skill set come into play. Great offensive line, you do well. Damon Harris has been good all season.
Yeah, you can attribute the line to a lot of success. We can even look at the Steelers with Bell, and as talented of a running back as Le'Veon Bell was for that team, you have to attribute a lot to a very good offensive line. And now he's struggling behind the Jets. So moving on to our last two players, they are both rookies. First off, we have Cam Akers. How has he been doing, kind of splitting carries with Henderson and Malcolm Brown?
Well, it hasn't helped him. He started the season really slowly. He wasn't being able to get in the offense. Sean McVay was feeding the hottest player. But in his last 4 games, he became the hot hand. Sean McVay was feeding him, and he's been really great in those 4 games. 390 yards, 2 touchdowns, despite getting injured halfway through the Jets game, coming back injured. He has really thrived in those last 4 weeks, running through the C gap with an average of 8 yards per carry up the middle, but only 3 yards per carry in the A and B gap, which is a little bit surprising. Henderson's had more success in the middle in those weeks, which is quite strange. And I think that you look at Akers, not the best running teams he's gone against. New England was his big game with 171 yards, and their run D has been really, really poor this season. A lot has been able to have success on them. They're not a good running team. The Jets have a good defensive line, so that's a fair point, but he was injured that game. The Cardinals have been solid on the defensive line, but nothing special. And then San Francisco's been very injured on the defensive line, so nothing special there. So he's played really well in those 4 games. Obviously, that New England game is going to bump up his stats. 29 rushes for 171 yards, just absolutely ridiculous. He's been playing really well. I think he's got a lot of potential. He was our number 2 running back for a reason, and he's played really well this season. He just doesn't have enough body of work or enough consistent body of work for me to put him any higher.
Do you think that now that he is starting to consistently get better, do you think that he emerges as the just number 1 back for the Rams going forward into next season, then a couple of years later?
I hope he does. The draft capital they spend on him is really high. They obviously like him as much as I do. I think that he's a really great running back, and I think that he and Henderson have a good pairing together. I think that's something they can use for the next couple of years. But this Cam Akers is the best talent on the team. He's been able to work with bad offensive lines in the past, but first year, it's been an impressive rookie year for him. I'd expect him to take the workhorse back role on this team because McVay loves rolling the hot hand. He's the best running back, so I'd expect him to perform the best.
Yeah, and if not, they do have Henderson and Brown to fall back on, and hopefully the Rams can, make a run in the playoffs because they did kind of struggle in that Seattle game, and that screwed up their seeding and some of their chances too. So moving on to the final player of this video, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who started off the season pretty hot, but started to cool down as time passed, and when Tyreek and Kelsey started heating up, he was the one that kind of sacrificed for it. So what are your thoughts on Helaire?
I mean, I love Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think at the beginning of the season, Andy Reid wanted to prove or wanted to establish a running game. In games where he's been given 20 carries, he's had 2 great games. Buffalo game, 26 carries for 161. Kansas City versus Houston week 1, 25 carries, 138. Not a great defensive line. What surprises me, you look at games like Baltimore where he got 20 carries, only 64 yards, 3.2 yards a carry. When he played New England, as I said, not a great run D, 16 carries, 64 yards. It's just an average game there. And then he had a stretch at the middle where in 3 games, he only had 19 carries, which is just, I feel like he's being underutilized a little bit in Kansas City just because their passing game is so efficient and Andy Reid just loves the passing game. And he's just really been able to supplement the passing game. And then I think his receiving ability has been underwhelming this season. I think we all expect him to be a better receiving back in his rookie year than he has been. Can you pull up his receiving DVOA? Because I'd like to see where that ranks. Because I don't think he's been anything exceptional or anything remotely. He's minus 13%. So really a surprising negative as a receiving end. I think that's a bit surprising. I think that's a bit harsh, but he hasn't been great. He's 6th in success rate among the 33 running backs, which is impressive. So his running game has been effective when he's given the chance. He's 8th in receiving yards after contact per reception, which is 3rd best in the league, or 8th best in the league. He's 3rd best in broken tackles per reception. So he's been solid overall. He's had a good rookie year, but he just hasn't had a consistent workload in Kansas City. I think that's true of any running back that goes there. So it's not the best scheme for running back to thrive, but we haven't seen the same like Kareem Hunt type levels from Clyde Edwards-Helaire as what he did in his rookie year.
Hilaire's receiving DVOA is at a negative 13.6%, 38th out of 48 eligible receivers. So yeah, not the best on the receiving end. I think that's what kind of sets him apart from guys like Kareem Hunt, who are able to thrive more in the passing game. But do you think that with more of a diminished role and with kind of the inconsistency of his role, do you think that he'll grow angry in Kansas City?
I don't know if he'll go angry because it's hard to grow angry when you're winning. Winning culture really is the best thing in football. But I think you have to look at how LSU used him more as he was a complement to that passing game because the passing game was the focal point of that team, but he was still been able to contribute to the passing game, was a really effective check down, was an effective runner, a change of pace back. I thought he was really effective at LSU, and his role was really effective for that offense. I think that Andy Reid needs to take some cues from what LSU did and what Joe Brady did in that offense, because you have a great talent here at running back that you need to use more effectively.
Yeah, so it's more of a utilization type thing because he is a very talented player. And we saw that, if the passing game for some reason isn't working out, they can fall back on Edwards-Helaire and still get offensive production. So that wraps up the first installment of our running back rankings. We went from 33, J.D. McKissic, all the way to 20, and that was Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave your thoughts and comments below about all these running backs and maybe ones that we should have had higher or lower. Remember to like, subscribe, and have a happy new year.